Carrying the tradition of Nate messing up from the beginning. No.
Put on my best European sound.
Yes, here we are. Welcome, everyone, to the Linux Saloon first European edition. We do not have anyone from Europe on here yet, but we will. We will in time. We're starting a little bit late today because we are sharing the channel with Destination Linux, the other shows, and Michael just got done finishing up This Week in Linux, episode 191, which is amazing, hard to believe. I know years ago, probably 2 or 3 years ago at this point, I had been away from Linux for a while and wasn't really following it, and wanted to started getting back into it and wanted to learn about like what's happening in current events and stuff like that. And I found This Week in Linux, and that was one of the first shows that I started watching and listening to and learning from. And so it's kind of funny that now I know Michael and I'm part of this. So, but it's great to see that he's still doing it, and he has a good time on his stream. So if you've never participated in that stream or the Destination Linux stream or Linux Out Loud or any of the other shows, you should definitely check it out. But it's our stream now, so we're here, and we're going to wait for some folks to show up. And in the meantime, we've got Steve and Eris and Adam and Bogdan. How you guys doing today?
Hello, all. Doing okay.
Doing all right.
Good.
Guru Danu says same people as on US edition.
Well, yeah, I mean, just to get the things started, but the whole point is to do this earlier in the day so that the folks that are in the earlier time zones or later time zones, however you want to say that, have an opportunity to participate without it being like 1 or 2 in the morning like it usually is. So we're trying to make this, I think this is 8 p.m. In the Netherlands and in that sort of region. So I'm an American. I know nothing about geography. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and those that are, European, if someone wants to step up and kind of help us with this during that edition, that would be more than okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It would actually be great to have, either a European host or folks that are from Europe to or from somewhere overseas. We're not excluding Asia or any Africa or any of the other continents for that matter. But we're the ones facilitating it for now, just to kind of get it started. But I'd love, and I'm the one that really kind of pushed for this because I really enjoyed the earlier edition when this was Big Daddy Linux Live. So I would like to get that started again. So hopefully we can gain a following and have folks join and participate on a regular basis. And depending on how popular it is, it could be every other week, it could be once a month, it could be every week. It doesn't matter, but it's all going to depend on the amount of participation we get. So we've got Gray Vapor. This is brilliant. I'm in Switzerland. See, there you go. Someone in Switzerland where it's much earlier in the evening than it normally would be, which is great. And Norbert says that it's 8 p.m. in almost everywhere in Europe for now, except tonight we'll set our clocks to summertime. Oh, okay. There you go. So from the next week, it will be from 2 p.m. Central. Gotcha. Excellent. So we've got some folks in the chat, on the YouTube chat, and anyone who would like to join, Eris has put the Zoom link in there. Feel free to jump in. You do not have to participate at the entire session. You don't have to be speaking the whole time. You're welcome to just jump in and participate when you want to. Say hello, whatever your comfort level is.
So if you tuned in for This Week in Linux, it was interesting how Michael talked about how the changes in NVIDIA made it possible for Ubuntu to finally switch over to Wayland by default for 2204. And all these changes were happening slowly, and you finally see like that big transition happening now for Wayland possibly. Yeah,
someone had mentioned the other day, Wayland is it 14 years? It's been a really long time since Wayland's been out. And anyway, and yeah, one of the biggest issues with adoption has just been people, supporting X, but then wanting to move to something else. So you kind of got the issues of dealing with X, but then also looking forward to Wayland. And if Wayland's always off in the future, when does it ever actually arrive? And one of the big stumbling blocks has always been, well, if you have an NVIDIA GPU, well, then it's just not going to work with Wayland. But fortunately, you know, NVIDIA, when was that? I think it was a year or two ago that they had said they were going to do more work with they had open sourced some things, and it actually did become much easier to use their driver in Linux.
I forgot what it's called exactly. It's like a generic buffer or something that they created.
Yeah, they do have GBM support. Yeah, it's in the 5.10 series of drivers. I was actually running it on GNOME and runs great, except for, you know, good old Zoom doesn't want to cooperate with any kind of Wayland anything. So I think it works on the other. It doesn't work on NVIDIA. I know that. It just it's Zoom. Like,
yeah,
it's just so frustrating. Like, because it has nothing to do with anything but like, oh, these people don't bring us money, so we're not going to care. Like, pretty standard, you know, money driving everything.
If you ever, you know, I have to assume this is something that could be taught in business school at this point, but if you have ever seen a company in the right place at the right time, it has to be Zoom, because, you know, at the outbreak of the pandemic,
yeah,
they were there. They were sort of the easiest, most affordable, most accessible option. Maybe not the most technically, you know, correct option or the best option, but it was the one that people gravitated towards, and their growth was enormous. You know, I mean, unbelievable. Like, literally that first month they grew, I think it was like 300% or something ridiculous.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And just the growing pains from that. I mean, the reason we've used Zoom is because it's one of the few that had supported Linux, at least at the time that we had started doing this stream.
Yeah.
I had to attend a WebEx stream or meeting not long ago, and actually they have a Linux client now too. So it makes me wonder, you know, will we start to see more support? And also, actually, Jitsi was maybe not so great at the time, but seems like maybe Jitsi is a better option now than it had been previously.
I'm not really sure.
I don't know. So
I think the thing that like Rocco didn't like about Jitsi was there was no waiting room. I don't know if that has been implemented now.
I think a lot of that is there are ways to sort of set different things up like that. I know I set up a Jitsi server just to play around with it. And there's a lot of, it's modular in the sense that there's a lot of different plugins and things you can build in. I don't know if it has exact feature parity with Zoom in terms of like a waiting room and stuff like that, but it hasn't, the quality has improved at least. Because at first, I mean, when I tried it, it was, no matter how good your connection was, it didn't matter. You know, it just was not, the quality was just not there. And if you had more than 5 or 6 people, it would just flat out, you know, choke.
Yep.
And it seems like maybe it's gotten a little better now. So
was that on the client end, like
server? It was, a lot of it had to do with bandwidth, the way it was using the bandwidth. It was just not very well optimized. The server itself. So I had set it up on DigitalOcean just as a, you know, to play around with the server, and the amount of bandwidth that it was sucking down for like 6 participants was ridiculous. Like, it was for, you know, I had it going for maybe half an hour with that many people, and I used a lot of the allotment of bandwidth for the server. Yeah. It was just like, whoa, okay.
And it doesn't get any better for like the web client, because, you know, I back before I started purchasing Zoom, you know, I tried that, and it was, you know, you have people, you know, it wasn't worth recording because images they'd be going in and out, you know, and you wouldn't get everybody's camera at all times, and that was the big withdrawal. You know, I get, you know, we're part of Linux and maybe part of the open source and all that, but sometimes open source does not work, and it, you know, you got to depend on things that are a little bit more stable. StreamYards is another one that's kind of, it's got real good. I guess a lot of their stuff is used on their back end, but I think it's a max of 6 participants. You know, and even if you pay for it, it's that you don't get much more under that.
Yeah, and it was not cheap, that's for sure. I know when I looked at it and played around with it, I used the free version, and some of the features that I wanted to use were pretty expensive. So anyway, but yes, so that is great news that we actually have a version that NVIDIA now is supporting Wayland session, and maybe that's going to be a big hurdle for them to get over, so Wayland can really move forward, and you can stop supporting two different standards. I know this laptop has the NVIDIA hybrid graphics, and that's always been a challenge for me to
Yeah,
it just doesn't
those are a
work.
mess.
Yeah, Norbert,
Hello, Norbert.
he made it.
Hey, Bogdan, do you have audio?
I saw him.
Interested.
I saw his camera pop on real quick.
Be interested to know, what Linux. Someone just knocked down a cabinet.
Norbert just fell down a flight of stairs.
Yep.
I shouldn't laugh. Maybe he actually did.
Is it picking up my correct microphone now?
It's better now.
Yeah.
You sound good now.
Okay, I didn't have it plugged in, so it was using the built-in one.
Okay. Yeah, it was interesting. We were trying to guess.
I won't be able to stay, but I just wanted to say hi. Bonjour.
Hello. Thank you for coming and saying hello.
Bonjour.
To just actually have some European people.
Yeah, it would be helpful. It would be nice.
Yeah. I think I can stay 10 minutes, but I wanted to.
That'd be great.
That's fine.
This is kind of semi-unscheduled. We
Yeah.
talked about it, and us Yanks, we're kind of messed up. So.
Seat of the pants. No, we just wanted to get something on the books just to show, and hopefully future streams will have more people. So, anything on your mind, Norbert, for the 10 minutes you're here?
Yeah, I wanted to add something to the Wayland discussion.
Go for it.
Because sort of you mentioned how Zoom doesn't like to play well with Wayland, and I think the most common problem I had was with OBS until it got fixed and it was working in Fedora. So because Xorg is an implementation of X11, but Wayland isn't an implementation, it's just a protocol. So there's GNOME on Wayland and Plasma on Wayland or Sway. Those are different implementations, which is a problem because if something works on Xorg, then it will work on all desktops that use Xorg. You can't really make something work with Wayland because you have to make it work specifically with all the different implementations. So I think what I mentioned it in the YouTube chat. I think Zoom has a whitelist and only lets you use screen sharing on Wayland when you're using a supported distro. I'm not sure what the list of supported distros are, and only if you're using GNOME, because I think that's the only implementation that they are working for.
So I'm going to guess maybe Ubuntu and possibly Fedora, because they're both flagship with GNOME. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, I mean Ubuntu almost certainly, because Ubuntu is always that is sort of the face of Linux in a lot of ways.
So in the middle of the previous semester, I fell back to using XFC on Debian on my laptop just to be able to share my screen properly, because some professors prefer to use Zoom.
Gotcha. What were you using in addition to Zoom? Because we were talking about that just as alternatives.
One of our professors, when we suggested that we should move online, I think he suggested some platform that haven't really heard of, and someone suggested Jitsi, and he was okay. He was done with it, so we use Jitsi. But we have multiple classes. Each professor has their own idea of what they want to use, and I think on paper everyone is supposed to just use Microsoft Teams and the Office Online, but it's mostly not the case.
Gotcha. Are you guys using some sort of learning management system for your lesson plans and all that sort of stuff? Like, is there or are you using? I know because someone was asking me about learning management systems specifically, and then and I've seen ones where, what is it? It's like Blue. Can't think of the name of it right now, but it actually had the video chat as part of the system itself. So it encapsulated or incorporated that as part of the lesson plans. Yeah.
So like Google Classroom.
Yeah,
maybe?
Stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it has a video chat option, but we've used that. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm not really sure I can't really say I can't list any other that might fit your description. So it's just like team management software, like Microsoft Teams or Slack is what we use for communication, even for classes.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it.
Is that Moodle by any chance?
Sorry?
Is that Moodle?
Yeah, we do have Moodle. Yeah.
Yes, Moodle is one. You're right. You're right. That's absolutely true.
Okay.
And
okay.
then
So we use that for tests and such.
Gotcha. Okay.
But not really tests or assignments. But not. And I'm not sure if you can like make calls with it.
Michael says big blue button.
Big blue button. Thank you very much. Yeah, when my daughter's school, because when the when the pandemic started, a lot of the schools here did not have any sort of distance learning capability, so they really didn't know what to do, and a lot of them just sort of said, okay, well, we'll start with Zoom. But Zoom is, that's just facilitating the communication. It's not facilitating any of the additional parts, like, how do I get lessons out, sort of that stuff. And Big Blue Button actually does have some sort of, I'd have to go back and look at it, but I had suggested that maybe they try that. But
because what we would do is we would have a Microsoft Teams. What I mean that is we would have a Slack channel or Google Classroom, and then the professor would post the Zoom link.
Got it.
But yeah, if everyone was just using Microsoft Teams, even though it's not the best in terms of performance, but it would be simple because everyone would just have to use the same platform for messaging and for the calls.
Someone said, Gorodono says people should push Element and Matrix, though. Matrix just actually, they just introduced a video chat option, didn't they? I think it's actually their own option.
Did you say Matrix or Element?
Matrix.
Weren't they? I don't know. Weren't they using a?
They'd been using
Jitsi backdrop, or
they had been, and then I think they
changed though.
No, I think it's specifically for Element.
Oh, specifically Element. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, I agree. And actually, I hadn't looked at Element or Matrix chat, whatever client you use. I'm using one called Skilled Chat. Shieldy Chat? Yeah, Shieldy Chat. Anyway, it's a fork of Element, but I hadn't looked at it in probably over a year. And when I looked at it a year and a half ago, it was not, I don't know, it was okay, but I mean, it was sort of clunky. And but I have to say, having used it in the last few weeks, it's much, much better than it had been. I've actually enjoyed using it. We do have a Linux Saloon room on Matrix, so if anyone's interested in using that instead of, because there is a Telegram as well, but we do have Linux Saloon. Actually, I'll throw the invite for that in the chat if anyone wants to come over there and join us. So I agree, Gorodono. We will push Matrix and Element more and more, especially since it does seem to be so much more capable than it had been previously. So
the problem is that decentralized services are still sort of a wide west of the internet. I'm not sure if like universities and schools would be willing to invest in using those just yet. Because I think our university, for example, has some agreement with Microsoft. That's why they're promoting the use of Microsoft Teams and such.
Gotcha.
But going a bit back to Wayland is I'm really looking forward to the day when I can just use Wayland everywhere. I'm using it on my laptop. The only place I haven't switched over yet is my workstation because I use NVIDIA proprietary NVIDIA drivers, and I tried for sometimes I have to do screen recording video based, and it doesn't really seem to work yet. At one point, I could get it to work with Fedora 34. I think by the 35, if I log into the Wayland session, it gives me some error to something. It thinks it's something is missing.
Gotcha.
Or it's not supported. So OBS won't even start.
Interesting. Yeah, and I guess that's what I had asked. I guess I don't understand Wayland well enough to, when Adam had tested the fact that, and had seen that Zoom was not working on the Wayland session, and my response will, does every single thing require a code change, either on the Wayland side or on whatever the software that's trying to run under Wayland? I guess I just don't understand it well enough to you know, I would think that if it's difficult for developers to adopt the standard, then that's maybe what's holding it back. But it sounds like maybe it's just different companies choosing whether or not they're going to put support behind it. And Adam's point about, you know, the Linux user base for Zoom is so small that the money's not there to justify the development hours to do the work. I don't know. So
Yeah, I think it's just generally hard to convince people to switch to a new technology when the current technology that they use just works.
Yeah.
Because what I know is that there's XVLAN. So if an application doesn't explicitly support doesn't run under VLAN, it can still run if only if it I think it's a compatibility layer. But yeah, I think they have to implement compatibility with VLAN, specifically the applications that they want, the developers of the application. But also, Windows X11 is decade older than the VLAN. I'm not sure if there's active development on Xorg still.
it
There
doesn't.
must be,
I don't
because
believe so. Yeah.
I think I've seen a new release of it
Oh, really?
a few months ago.
Oh, okay. I thought I saw.
So maybe
yeah.
there is. Yeah, I'm still waiting for Xbox.
You know, I think it would be
okay.
It would be irresponsible in some ways, I think, for them to just sort of say we're not going to support it or not going to continue to develop it. I mean, I would say, okay, no more features or no more, you know, new features, but there has to be some support for, you know, bug fixes and stuff like that. So
yeah, because they start implementing new features that might cause problems with backwards compatibility with because I think Xorg is just so widely used because it just works.
Right.
I mean, it does work.
It does.
For most time, but for some use cases, maybe it's, for example, on NVIDIA XFCE, sometimes I had screen tearing. It doesn't seem to be the case in Fedora, but maybe one could say that that's on XFCE to fix, or that's on NVIDIA, or maybe it's because I've heard that people said that Wayland is great because there's basically no screen tearing. But at one point, I'm pretty sure the first time that the proprietary drivers on Fedora 34, I think I had screen tearing by going in and out of the overview.
Your audio is breaking up quite a bit, Norbert.
Yeah, batteries.
Oh, that's probably what it is. Yeah, your probably batteries are dying. That's what it sounds like.
Did it manage to go through for my sentences?
Yeah, we could understand you, but there were little chunks like breaking up, but we could hear what you were saying. Yeah. It was it was a little difficult, but yeah, it's okay.
Sorry.
Hey, Peter's here.
Hello.
You know, technically he is European.
Despite Brexit, I'm still European.
So we now have almost even. We're still.
But
no, he's a peon. Is what?
But Eric, the year is coming up fast, where half of my life will be in Britain and half of my life will be in the USA.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know that. That's fantastic.
I've been here 23 years and I moved when I was 32, so that's coming up fast.
Okay.
So now you got to figure out something where you're going to move to start your third part of your life.
I was thinking Chicago actually, but
next logical step is either Canada or Australia, just to see where your accent might end up in another 20 years.
The Australians would just love them.
It's past my 10 minutes, so I have to go. So it will be a bit more ambulanced.
Okay, well, thanks for joining, and we will do this again, and we'll have announced it more, giving you more notice than this. So
maybe I can jump in on the proper. I shouldn't say proper, the US stream for a bit.
The later stream.
Maybe not. Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for joining. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
Take care, Norbert.
Bye, Norbert.
Take care, Norbert.
So Bogdan, what distro do you use, or what brought you to Linux?
So I heard Michael talking about it up and down, and well, I had to try it. At least at the time I was on Manjaro, I guess. Well, I particularly didn't like that sometimes when I did updates, I ended up with a broken system. I don't so I'm a computer software tester, and well, I'm consider myself experienced with setting up stuff, but I don't want to do that. I don't know. I want to listen to music, not fix my computer.
Right.
Yeah, I hear you. Right. And we've been talking about the idea of just being able to sit and use the computer without having to go through a lot of setup and maintenance. So I imagine if you're testing software for a living, the last thing you want to do is come home and spend yet more time trying to get your computer working.
Yeah, distros these days are far easier than were like 10 years ago. Far easier.
Yeah.
No doubt. No
Now,
doubt about that.
Manjaro, that's that kind of by the way I use Arch of distro, isn't it?
Kind of.
It's a particularly fun distribution, but then if things break up, it's fun to start to learn, but I don't want to do that on
Yep.
daily.
Yeah, we get it.
So what type of software do you test?
I'm working with some data center software, and well, the customer is deploying a product based on Kubernetes.
Oh, okay.
It's they package the Kubernetes into a cluster, and well, they start doing stuff with it, and well, it's they don't contribute too much to upstream.
We've been talking about that as well. how companies will use open source technologies and software and projects, and what is the appropriate way to support those projects? Is it financial? Is it by pushing your code back upstream so that everybody can benefit from it? So that's interesting to hear you say that. And Adam's been actually learning. I think he spent many hours in the last few weeks or last week or so learning Kubernetes.
Yeah, it's always fun.
You said you were pretty impressed with what you had seen.
Yeah, I mean, Kubernetes is really complex, but also pretty powerful. The complexity is almost necessary for the power. And when I say complex, I don't mean like hard to understand. I just mean there's a lot of moving parts. So like once you each individual part is pretty straightforward, but you have to learn a lot of individual parts and how they all fit together, because if something goes wrong, you got to kind of know the way it's all put together. But yeah, it's pretty powerful. I think it really depends on your use case. For like, huge deployments and stuff and enterprise and all that, it's really useful. Home stuff, I mean, maybe if you're just tinkering around, but it's kind of overkill for most smaller setups.
Yeah, I remember I was playing something. It's Kubernetes Cube, or there's some Minikube. Yes, I was playing around with that.
That's just a cluster running on one node.
Yeah, and I think it was just simplified on purpose because of what I was trying to do. But it ended up, I was just trying to do something simple, and it was way too complicated. I was just like, okay, this is, I don't need this this level of like complexity to just run. I think it was just I was like doing a web server or something, so. But yeah, I like you were saying, the idea, you can sort of look at advancements in technology, and you look back and you say virtualization was a huge advancement, right, in terms of how you utilize hardware and deploy software, and that really allowed for a lot of horizontal scaling, and then I would say, then you go to the next step, which is containerization. And now, right now, we're we're well into it at this point, but I think there's still a lot of businesses and areas of software that containerization will benefit. Yeah. If you had to give someone the...
What do you mean it's overkill? I can run my Hello World in Raspberry Pi. 120 Raspberry Pis.
No, I know. I agree. I think it's one of those things though, where the businesses that were taking advantage of it, more or less that it was developed to solve those problems. And now it's a matter of, how do other how does that scale out to other use cases and things like that? And, you know, where is it appropriate to use it versus sticking with something like virtualization versus, you know, so I'm not in the industry anymore. I was in IT for about 20 years and I don't do it anymore. So, I don't have a reason to know a lot of this stuff anymore, which is why I've sort of, I look at it objectively outside of it and just sort of say, okay, I can kind of understand how that works, but because I'm not doing it, I don't feel comfortable saying, well, this is exactly how this works or how I would use it. So, I can think of many instances where I was supporting something and having containerization would have made it very easy to be portable, to be easy to deploy. There were lots of benefits to it. And just the idea of having the playbooks and being able to spin up, you know, the same environment in multiple places. Yeah, there's a lot to it that is really very, you use a lot of like, Terraform and Ansible type stuff, don't you, Adam?
Yeah.
And that's all just after my time. It just wasn't a thing whenever I was doing it. So
Yeah, it's improved a lot.
yeah, everything for me was a virtual machine. So if I needed to test something, I had to spin up another virtual machine, you know, which is the full OS, and install all the software packages and configure everything. And, you know, that just took, even if you had a snapshot of something, it still took time to go and do all the different things versus, you know, what you can do now with playbooks and stuff like that. So
yeah, Ansible has saved me a lot of effort. Ansible has like been such a godsend to doing my job in any amount of reasonable time.
Well, you were saying, in terms of deploying changes and have it being almost like a software revision or something, where you were basically like, I'm not explaining this the right way, where basically every change you made, you were essentially like doing a check-in, check-out process, so that you could easily keep track of everything.
So yeah, through version control and stuff.
Right. Thank you. Yes, that's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah, that definitely helped. That definitely helped with you know, taking care of all that stuff.
Well, just coming in after someone too, like if something happens, and be able to like look and see, okay, what changed between that now and then. That used to require a fair amount of, you know, detective work.
Yeah.
So
I'm quite curious. What I feel like is stopping Linux adoption right now is that it's complicated for people to manage change at the end user level. So, like configuration management for end users, I don't know.
Yeah, they I'm not entirely sure that like users would necessarily need that. But,
No, but
I know like OSs like Nix OS, I think, handles it like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
what about something like, you know, Butterfest snapshots? Every time you install a package, it's going to make a snapshot. Do you think that furthers us along to be able to recover from maybe mistakes or something?
That could help. I mean, but so for example, I use KDE. I'm on Fedora KDE spin.
Okay.
And what's interesting for me, I guess, let's say I make some changes to KDE, and I wanna persist those changes, or to, I guess, send them to another computer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not simple.
No.
That is supposed to be the promise of NixOS. You make your config file, and then you pop it into another computer. You install everything with all the programs, everything you want, all your settings.
Yeah.
It is very difficult to get it off the ground though. But once you have the file done, you just copy it over.
Yeah, I've actually tried that myself. There are a number of configuration files that Plasma creates. It's not consistent from what I found, and I actually had some difficulties. But you can, you know, grab those files and then put them on a different instance. But I didn't I think I had some difficulties, not only number one, finding the files because they're in like a, hidden folders and you have to really dig for them. And then also just getting all of the changes. So it was saving different parts of the configuration in different files, which made it difficult to get the total snapshot of everything. But I agree with you, the idea that you can, MX Linux actually does an interesting thing with that, where you can take a system that you've configured, however you want it, with the software that's on it, with the changes to the desktop environment, to configuration, whatever it is, and you can actually make a snapshot of that and have it even be like an ISO file that you can then take and deploy elsewhere on other systems, or even just run as a live CD. I've done that where I'll put recovery software, get everything the way I'd have it for a recovery system, and then save that as an ISO, and then have that as like a live boot ISO on a thumb drive, and let me boot up, any computer and know what, and then have that customized system. So MX Linux does sort of give, and it's actually a really easy way to do it, because the way that they've made it available to the end users, it's just an option. That basically it's a tool that you call up, and it just walks you through the process of creating the image. So I think there's been some attempts made, but I agree with you. And the other thing is just from an enterprise standpoint, the idea of consistency across desktops and being able to have portable desktops and all that sort of thing. It's not exactly the same, but it sort of enters into the conversation. Who was it that's working on it? Excuse me. I know there's some distributions that have been trying to make some headway in that space, but anyway, yeah, I agree with you.
So I actually, the customers shipped to me their Windows laptop, and Windows, well, seem to be quite magic. I mean, it even recognized it's the laptop from the customer. I didn't quite. I mean, it seems to be some privacy. Should I put it? I don't know. It's something linked to Intune services. That's how Microsoft calls it. And there's some way these Intune services associate the laptop hardware with the customer. And I was immediately, as I opened the Windows setup, I got the intranet domain name to log in.
Okay.
Well, the point is, I think what we need with Linux is to have some sort of a GitHub where to share these Nix packages. These.
Gotcha.
I mean, the infrastructure is, and I'm not sure if GitHub is really properly. I mean,
well, the idea of something like a repository that you can put.
Well, I don't know.
No. I think GitHub is a working. That's something that everyone understands, that it is a place where code lives and projects live, and you can see revisions and log issues and check in, check out, and yeah, I get what you're saying.
I don't really find the Nix OS to be there, but here's my idea. What if we did an OBS? I mean, SUSE build service, which well, they run a server that generates packages for many distributions. And if we had Nix packages as input, and we could generate packages for all other distributions, all others, well, you get what I mean.
Within reason, yeah.
Yeah. For example, Mozilla may start using that service to produce packages, and right now they don't package for very many distributions.
Right.
And it's quite sad. I mean, on Windows, Firefox is available on the same day that they release it.
Right.
But if you are using Fedora or God forbid Debian, you still have to wait months or years.
Yeah.
For
yeah, leaving the packaging up to the distributions themselves. Yeah, and that's why a lot of people use or distributions use Ubuntu as a base or Debian as a base, or so that they don't have to do all that work with packaging. So I see what you're saying. If you could submit your code to a build service that would then build the packages for blah, 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 whichever systems. So rather than leaving it to the distribution and having to spend those resources, you'd have a build system that would just spit them out. Yeah. And I don't know enough about this OpenSUSE build system that they have, but apparently it does, I guess, something similar to that where you can.
It makes packages for other distributions, including OpenSUSE, if you put your code there.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you referenced that, and I think that might be somewhere that you could try that.
But
possibly.
It doesn't. I mean, you need to hard code the transformation from a certain package to another package. If you need to, if you have configured it to generate RPMs and deb packages, when you want to add Arch Linux, you need to add that support manually. You need to configure it, and it's a lot of effort, but I don't think that will scale. I mean, I'm not sure how to put it.
It's okay.
So this also goes back to Stamp and Flatpak. That's why there's Stamps and Flatpaks, where you build it for Flatpak, you build it for Stamp, and then it'll work on all the distros that support Stamp or Flatpak, and you build it once that way. Some apps won't maybe transfer that way, but I mean the majority of them will.
Yeah, but I'm not sure I always want that. I mean, sometimes Flatpak apps don't look the way I want. As a user, I'm not sure as a developer, but so I'm on KDE. I download some Flatpak app and it's using GNOME settings. I don't want that. Well, I don't like Firefox for doing that either, but anyway.
Gotcha. Well, maybe something like that is yet to come then. I guess that's, there's no perfect solution, which is what has kept us, discussing this issue over and over about what is the best way to package software. The idea of, I was talking to Adam about this earlier in the week about the fact that, everybody packages things for, if there's a Linux version of a piece of software, almost certainly it's going to be packaged for Ubuntu, because that's this sort of the standard desktop. Whenever you say like desktop Linux, you say, well, if you create a deb package for Ubuntu, that's going to be the large portion of the market, I guess. Yeah. That idea of a standard, I agree with you. The standard sort of executable or a standard package is still not solved. And we've come further. I know myself, it used to make a big difference which distro I ran, because I had to rely a lot on the packages that the distro provided me. And if I wanted up-to-date packages, then I had to run a rolling release. If I wanted, for a more stable fixed release, then I knew I was going to have older versions of software. And to a large extent, Flatpak has solved that for me, where a lot of the applications that I run are Flatpaks that I can run on any distribution. And that has solved that. But it's not universal. It hasn't fixed it for everything. And it's actually disappointing sometimes whenever I go to, I find out about a new piece of software and I go to look for it, and it's like, it's not a Flatpak, and there's no easy way to get it because it's not available for my system. So it's not something we've solved, that's for sure. But I also recognize the value of something about having a package repository, and the idea that the software repository, I think, is what differentiates Linux as an operating system from Windows, from Mac. The idea that on Windows, the last time I set up Windows, I had to go and get different installer, packages from all the different software vendors. And it was a process of literally going to all their websites. And I mean, it takes so much time to do that versus the model that's in place on Linux, which is there's a base set of packages and software that you get from the distribution. Then there are you can do PPAs as a way to branch out from that, and other repositories you can do, Flatpaks and snaps and app images. And, it's so easy to get software in Linux, especially in comparison. And I think that's what makes using a Linux desktop more convenient to me. If I set up a new Linux desktop, the amount of time it takes me to get up and running is infinitesimal compared to Windows. It just takes me days on Windows to get going, Whereas Linux, it's like maybe a matter of hours, if that. So.
No, the problem I see is hello, Michael.
Hey, Ariane.
Hello.
I'm glad you joined. You were on last week and you said you joined, so I'm glad you did. Sorry, go ahead.
You have a pre-packaged version or a previous version. I only have an incremental change. Packaging it for your distribution should be trivial if you already packaged a previous version. I mean, you should just follow a rule.
You mean like a Delta package? Like just yeah.
That's what Solus uses.
Yes.
Yeah, that does help a lot. Delta updates versus full code updates. Yeah. All right.
And if I set up things properly, at least at some point, it will help some other people. I mean, I have installed OBS, and I don't know, some other guy may not know how to do something particularly in OBS.
Gotcha.
Take my configuration.
Delta thing exists in RPM. You can install with deltas with RPMs.
Says the voice.
The voice.
The voice.
We heard him singing earlier this evening.
I did.
Oh no! I'm so sorry to hear that.
I did sing.
I missed that part.
All right, I will do an encore. You're welcome.
Oh boy! Here, let me mute him real quick.
Rude.
What did you sing, Michael?
Oh, randomness, no purpose.
Oh, just meandering.
I just started singing in the stream because there's a topic on today's show from a company called Imagination Tech, and they make something a GPU. They have hardware for ARM devices and stuff called Power VR, and so I decided that for some reason, every time I said the word imagination, I wouldn't say it that way. I would say imagination.
Oh.
So every time I would say it, it's like I would say, and this new driver from the Imagination Tech company is relating to the Power VR stuff. That's how I do it every single time.
Yep.
I love it.
Cat mad, patrons upset. I mean, the world is burning. He just keeps going on.
Oh,
There's a little bit of people who did not enjoy it, but
Nah.
I did.
I find that hard to believe.
Could be worse.
It could have been worse. That's true.
I don't believe that at all.
And coming from me, that's a compliment, Michael. So that.
I also did it in my opera voice.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
Less people did not like. So.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But this, I joined because of the conversation about the Flatpak and
Please.
Like the spec file in OBS. OBS is very interesting and powerful, and it would have been.
And just for point of clarification, This isn't
OBS and then
OBS, the
open build.
broadcasting software. This is a build service that's provided by OpenSUSE.
Open build service is what it's called. And to be fair to everyone involved in OpenSUSE, yes, OBS did stand for Open Build Service before OBS Studio existed. Unfortunately,
Yes.
you still can't win this battle. So OBS build service is very awesome. It has a lot of great power, and you can build all sorts of stuff, and the integration with OpenQA is amazing. And if distros were to implement it, there would be a lot of power that they could offer. But SUSE is not good at explaining things to people and telling them why they should care about stuff. So most people are not aware that OpenQA exists or what it is. Even if they did heard of it, they don't know what it does. And
OpenQA has one weakness. It requires automation to be based on pixel position. So if things move on the screen, it won't find your buttons.
that's but that's allowed to the testing of visual aspects. That's not the only thing that OpenQA does. Like it does the other performance integration build system testing too. So like that wouldn't be related to the issue you're talking about. But that is a fair point. But even if it didn't work exactly perfect, it's still beneficial to the case of the people who be able to implement it and automate some things. So they couldn't automate everything. That's true. But there are some cool things that it could. And that is weird. What is happening?
That camera tracking is awesome.
Yeah, his camera tracked him through the room, and it freaked me out. What just happened?
Oh, I looked away. I wasn't paying attention.
He got up, and I saw the camera start moving. Like, wait, okay.
It's so casual.
But
It was a camera flex.
The camera moved with him.
Oh wow! I'm
Yeah.
gonna look
Set
back.
up all the monitors. Wow.
I'm gonna look back.
He decided that was too offensive, so he left.
Oh, I see. I just looked back on.
Well, he put on like wireless headphones, so I think he can hear us talking about this.
He said, "What? OpenQA? No," and left.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Check.
Like,
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Can you hear us talking about this when you left?
Could not hear you.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
We were watching it. Your camera followed you when you got up and moved. Your camera followed you.
It's a new toy that I got from. So it's a Chinese company called Obs Bot.
Another
And,
OBS.
Yes, another OBS, of course.
Jeez.
But this one is
Naming
really
is hard.
related to OBS Studio. I mean, it's a webcam that's instrumented to do PTZ. I don't know if you know.
Untitled Zoom. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So those are really, really expensive. And well, these Chinese people figured out how to do it for, I don't know, 300 euros.
Wow.
$300.
Yeah.
I'm not that surprised in the sense of that technology is very refined in China.
Well,
They're using it on mass production, literally in office buildings, public buildings, literally the streets. It's everywhere.
Good point. Good point. Yeah, they have so much surveillance. Yep.
So, but from the stance of mass production, so I can see why it's cheaper. That's kind of my stance. Not that I'm.
To
I have
bring
no
it
other
back on
comments on
track.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
To bring it back on track, that was very cool effect to the point where it completely derailed the conversation in every way. as
Yeah.
soon as
We
it
all
happened.
stopped and looked at it.
sorry.
No. It was really
It was
cool.
awesome. It was
so-
great because it was so unexpected. It was like, yes, what is happening right now?
Well, so
The OBS camera was not having it. That we were having dishing on OBS, the other one. But
what's the Apple has that right in their smart display where it will it's actually zooming in and then panning around within the shot
Yeah.
to follow.
Yeah.
on the
They have it
newest
on their
iPads, I
the new
believe.
iMac or whatever it's called.
They
Yeah.
call it like center stage or something.
Center stage. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but they're doing it by taking the whole image and then just zooming in on parts of it and moving that zoom around, not actually physically moving a camera. Like
It's pretty nauseating, actually.
Really?
Like when you're like having to talk to people with it, yeah, it gets pretty nauseating.
I can imagine. Yeah.
It's like especially if they're moving around, and you're just like, ugh, like it's like they don't have to move much for it to kind of shift, and it's like, okay, you can just sit still, please.
Yeah, or just turn the camera off. I'll just listen. Yeah.
Yeah, I probably don't want to see them anyway. So,
But that's cool. It actually has a little like motorized mechanism that's moving the camera around itself.
Definitely.
It's cool. Well,
So
now we
I
all
got
want one.
For
Mhm.
trainings. I mean, I'd like to start to do the online trainings
Mm.
for software testing, and I don't know. I hope.
You know, the
at
other
the end-
other thing that I've had experience with is conference rooms. If you're in a conference room, some of them will have mics in front of every participant, and then in the corners there are cameras that are supposed to focus on the hot mic, right? The one that's and it never worked right. Our company spent I don't know how many tens of thousands of dollars on that conference room, getting that all set up, and each corner had the camera, and each person had a microphone in front of them, and then had all this set up and an iPad to control it all, and it never worked. Never.
So mic activity then would decide what camera needed to be pointed at what mic. That's
Yeah.
what you
Yeah.
just described.
That's
yeah,
that's what it was supposed to do. It was supposed to know, because the microphone itself should have enough, I mean, it has a gate on it, but then it would know there's enough noise that this person's actually speaking. It's basically if you're doing the participant view in Zoom instead of the panel view, right? And it's supposed to know that, okay, this person's talking, so I'm going to show their picture.
yeah.
But it because inevitably someone would be shuffling papers or moving something around, and it just was never good at determining what thing was important enough to take center stage. So it's a popa. I had to do it. I'm sorry. I know
Good
it's
day.
stupid. Hello,
very
Alan.
European
everyone?
of you.
How are you?
Good, thank you. How is everyone?
I haven't seen you in forever.
A long time.
Been a very
Yes.
long
Great,
time.
right?
I think it's over a year. Probably.
Yes, over a year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good to see you. How are you today?
Tickety bit. Always waving our Steam controllers around, are we?
Hickety
Is that what we're doing?
Mine's in the drawer.
Adam says his is in a drawer.
Yeah.
I don't use mine quite so much. I tend to use the Stadia controller now, wired mostly. I find that
Why the Stadia controller?
because I like the hello, Michael.
Hello.
Because I like it. I like how it feels in my hand, and I like the button presses.
They're super
At-
clicky.
Like yeah, this I'm not like trying to ask you like why in general, but do you use it for all like everything, not even just Stadia, just everything?
I don't use Stadia. I use it for Steam gaming and any gaming where there is
Oh,
a
really?
controller.
So how do you think the construction of the Stadia controller is, specifically the RB button? The top,
That-
the right, no, the
R1,
right
the
bumper
first.
on the top. So the trigger and then the bumper. So the RT is the trigger, RB is the bumper. So PlayStation would be R1. So like the button right before that, right in front of the trigger.
On the
Yeah,
top,
I
the shoulder.
mean, I
buttons,
don't have a strong
basically.
opinion about them. They seem all right.
Okay. So it's a weird question, I know, but I might have a little bit of a slight addiction to Rocket League.
A bit.
Slight,
Really?
just a slight one. And I have now broken 3 Xbox controllers
Oh.
buttons, specifically the RB button, because they're poorly built.
Not because
And
you're pushing your index finger through the
that's
controller.
not it. No, definitely not. It's just the fact that it's poorly built. And the official Xbox controllers last about a year a piece. And the third party one I bought, because it was like $20, $30 cheaper, lasted 2 months. So it's terrible.
And how long has the Stadia controller lasted?
I haven't got one yet, but I was thinking,
Oh.
but based on if the way they constructed it, if it's similar to the PS5, it might be similar in terms of like build quality that might last longer, because the PS5 so far has been quite good, except for the fact that the shape of the PS5 is a little weird. And I don't necessarily like it because trying to go from an Xbox controller to a PS5, like it oddly makes the experience, kind of clunky.
I haven't
To
used
be
any
honest-
PS5 controllers. I've only used recently. I've only used the Steam and the Stadia, and I don't use it as aggressively as you do. I have played racing games with it, so I do have my finger quite hard down on it sometimes.
And I love my
love it.
DualSense. That thing is amazing.
Is it?
It's like the most comfy controller I have. Yeah.
What is?
Of course, I play on a PS5, not on a PC, but yeah, it's really comfy.
The PS5 is a nice controller. I do like it. It's just, it looks like when you showed the Stadia controller, it looked like it's kind of like a hybrid between the two. Like it kind of looks like it fits more like an Xbox controller, but has the configuration of a PlayStation controller.
Yeah,
So
I find
I've-
it quite comfy for sure.
I've seen some teardowns of that controller, particularly if you want to surface it. You're not going to have any luck with that, unfortunately. I mean, controller-wise, from what I heard, they actually score quite well. But I believe everything is sealed, right? So it's snapped into place. There are no screws on the back.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't
with
see
my
any screws
Xbox
on.
controllers, I also can't service them because once I break them, I broke them, and they're not. They can't.
Yeah.
So that's how I treat all my controllers. I have a collection of controllers that are now decoration.
They're trophies.
Yes, they are trophies of my Rocket League prowess.
Addiction.
And
Let's
it's
call it what
always
it
the
is.
RB button. It doesn't matter why, but it's always the RB button. And the Xbox one
It doesn't
breaks.
matter why. It does matter.
Okay, I changed my configuration so that I have I use the bumper buttons and the trigger buttons all at the same time. So I do like a 2-finger thing on the top, and the RB button is the boost, which is one of the most necessary buttons on the thing. And comfortably wise, it's fantastic and it works great. But the controller just can't take it because I hit it too much apparently. But the way that the PlayStation one is built feels like it can last longer. I mean, I've only been doing it for like 2 weeks, so I don't know yet. We will find out. I will give you an update for everybody who is interested in a future episode of Linux Saloon. But I'm just looking to see if I can find any other solutions where it will survive my fingers. That's all.
So was there a topic of conversation this week that I completely missed because I only arrived like 10 minutes ago because I've been out dropping my daughter off?
We were just mainly just talking about different packaging schemes and strategies and how.
A year has passed since we last discussed this.
Yeah, here
Time
we
to
are again.
discuss it again.
Yes, exactly. You can blame Bogdan for this. It's his fault. No, this was really just getting together, and I wanted to get back on having the European edition be a thing, and I didn't expect this to be much more of just other than folks getting together and saying hi. And so anything you would like to talk about? Is there anything on your mind this week?
No, not at all. Nothing at all.
Nothing at all. I bet not.
Nothing.
Nothing. Is there? No, there's nothing. I
Have
went
you
out
tried-
today. Oh, go on.
Have you tried the Flatpak OBS?
I have not tried the flat pack of anything. I do not have any flat packs installed on any of my systems.
I'm pretty sure I run OBS as a flat
You're the
pack.
first person who have ever said it to me.
No, I'm not. I'm definitely not the first person to have said that.
To me, yes.
But
I think
I'd be
Wimpy has a couple.
I would be surprised. There are a lot of people I've met over the years who are refuseniks on the new packaging formats, and not
for sure.
explicitly snaps or explicitly
Yeah,
flat
just
packs, but
all the
they don't like
universal
them all.
ones. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Gotcha.
Michael, actually, Nerfed is very anti flatpak as far as I know.
Well,
he
I
believes
think
in
he's
this-
anti-universals, right?
No, but I mean, he believes in that the distro should regulate the packages.
Right. So he's
Right, that's
anti-universal packages. It's not really Flatpak.
Yeah,
just all
well,
of them.
in a
I've
sense.
seen that before.
Yeah.
I've seen that before for sure.
Yeah.
'Cause it
I'm
is-
not anti. I just don't use them. I just
Gotcha.
have no need for them. So
Fair enough.
sorry
Interesting.
to cut that conversation dead short there.
No,
Totally
it's
fine.
it's a
Totally fine.
It's one that we bring up in Hash. It's for a couple minutes every now and then, just for the fun of it. But Eris just shared something that Ventoy. If you guys are familiar with Ventoy, it's a bootable,
very cool
USB option. Apparently, they're offering a subscription service as a way to fund the project.
What?
Yeah, so
Interesting.
it's for the better and sustainable development of Ventoy. I provide the subscription service, with the benefits being exclusive official website forum, experience the new version first, customized documentation, professional technical support, specific ISO support, question response, and Ventoy roadmap for $19 a year.
That's not
That's in
much.
real money.
So
19 a year, that's not bad.
That's a low amount, isn't it?
if you want to support them, I guess that's fair. But then I start
That's-
thinking
we had a
Ventoy
conversation about that.
roadmap.
I think that's totally good. I think all open source projects should introduce something like this, whether it's a description system or open collective or
Yeah.
something that allows them to, have a consistent expectation
Yeah.
of funding. However they do that.
That keeps coming up a lot too, and it's something that's bothered me for a while. That corporations use open source software to their benefit to make money, and then do not either push their code changes back upstream, or do not donate to the financially or in any material way, other than it's a very one-way relationship. And how do you solve that? We've seen developers that'll just literally say, screw it, I'm done. I'm not letting anyone use my code for free at all anymore. And I'm not sure that's the right way. And, we've seen, corporate sponsorship of projects. Firefox is a good example, that takes money from the hand, essentially from the people that they're trying to, it seems like such a conflict of interest, right? To have Google funding something, like Firefox. So I don't know that there's ever been a great solution other than maybe something like this.
Yeah.
I like the way Krita or Krita, however you want to pronounce it, and some of the other cross-platform open source tools do it, where they provide a paid version in proprietary app stores, and basically, a billion Windows users fund the development of the Linux version, or the way Ardor or Arda, however you want to pronounce it, does it, where you have to pay for a binary build, that kind of thing. So those of us who are nerds who want to use the packages from our repository or build from source can still do that, and there's nothing stopping you doing that. But those people who just want to, press a magic button and the software arrives and they can install it on Windows, they get that, but they pay a little bit, and that helps fund the development. I think that's if your software is cross-platform, like if you think about all the very popular pieces of software on Linux, they're pretty much all cross-platform.
Yes.
Firefox VLC, OBS, they're all cross-platform, and they're super popular on every other platform as well as they are on Linux.
Right.
There's no exclusive Linux software that is high profile and generates tons of income. There just isn't, right?
Yep.
I'm happy to hear if someone's got a suggestion for one, but there isn't. And so those pieces of software that can generate revenue on Windows and use that to fund Linux, brilliant.
Most of the ones that do exist that I could have used an example with are now all cross-platform almost instantly when they get popular. So even the ones that did start early, like, in the 90s that were focused on Unix or Linux based, eventually are now everything. So it whatever.
Yeah.
But I think the point of Krita is, by the way, I don't know if it's Krita or Krita. I have no idea. But I like to say Krita. It just seems right to me.
I know what you're talking about, and that's the usefulness of language is you say a word and I understand it and I know what you're talking about. No need to worry about it, really.
Right, exactly. Or the same thing. It's like when people talk about GNOME versus
I knew that
GNOME,
was coming.
But it's funny
you not
because I
see
have an
the-
answer. There is official answer for that. The answer is GNOME.
I know.
That is the
No,
right one.
there isn't. There is an official answer from them, which is we don't care. And
Yes,
they
that's true
tweeted
too.
at me.
They said-
tweeted at me, and I shared it and was like, "There you go. That's the answer."
Yes. That is true. He said technically it's GNOME, and also we don't care.
Right.
but
I think
the
it
Krita
depends who
method is
answers the
fantastic.
Twitter account. Like if it's
Some-
the person who's answering.
I can't remember where I saw it, but I just saw someone saying something about talking to a friend about technology and that they were using GNOME, and the friend was like, "What are you saying?"
Oh, that was me.
Oh yeah, and go ahead, so you tell it.
Yeah, so it was a coworker of mine, and I was describing stuff to him and using the word GNOME, and he just kept staring at me like something was wrong. And after a little bit, I like stopped, and he's like, "Do you seriously not know how to pronounce that word?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Gnome." I was like, "Oh." And, like, I explained to him that, like, in my mind, GNOME is the desktop and gnome is the creature. And like, so I just reflexively say GNOME when I'm referring to the desktop. And he had never heard like someone say it that way. He thought I was just legitimately stupid. And it was like, well, that's fun.
Yeah.
Actually, we're having a laugh about this right now, but I do think this is actually one of the points in Linux in generally when like certain things are being tried out for the public, like, hey, try this out. Maybe you'll like this as an alternative to Windows or whatever. And you get these kind of discussions, and then I think it's you get focused on the wrong things if you're worried about how you should pronounce it, and that's what people hear, and then they're like, "Oh, it sounds funny. Why would I? Is this serious? Could I?"
You're right,
you know,
and it completely derails the conversation. Like Michael was about to make a point about Krita, and he's completely been derailed and hasn't been able to make the point,
Right.
because we've had a conversation about how to pronounce Krita and GNOME.
Right.
Totally true. It completely derailed. Almost as much as his camera moving.
Yes. Yeah. Alan, you missed it. Bogdan has this new.
Oh, I know. I saw it.
Oh,
It's
did you?
great.
Okay.
I love it. I love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, Michael, what was your point about Krita or whatever you want to say?
Well, Krita, that I've decided to just go with, regardless if it's true or not, is a cool approach because they started off as a open source project that only just did its own thing, and they just whenever they could, and then they decided to do like a fundraiser on Kickstarter. So they did a couple fundraisers and then created a foundation from the fundraisers that they made, so they could take all of the work they did from that and then kind of build out a even bigger project. And then now they started doing like Popey said, doing the whole approach on the Windows store, and they're even on the Steam store too. And that's really cool. And I think it's fantastic that they're trying out different models that in some cases people look at open source projects even having a business model in any way whatsoever as being like sacrosanct or something like that. Right.
Yeah,
And
I think a lot of people would rather everything was fully community run, like they prefer the Debian model than the Ubuntu model, or some Fedora model than the Red Hat model. Something that's fully community run.
Yeah.
I think there's one of the elephant in the room though is that these pieces of software that are generating income are popular because there's a real need for them. Like OBS is a super functional, very useful piece of software for lots of people, not just like live streamers, game streamers, screen recording. There are some other really super niche things that I can't talk about in before 9 o'clock, should we say, that use OBS. And they're really, really popular. And you look at VLC, how insanely popular VLC is, and Krita is very popular because it serves a purpose. Like if you're an open source developer and you make, yet another calculator app, you're not going to be able to retire on the funds you generate from yet another calculator app.
fair enough.
But if you can create something which is, if you come up with a good idea and develop something and build a community and create an application and publish it and make it cross-platform, if it is cross-platform, this is the key thing. If it's cross-platform, you could probably generate some money from it. If it's Linux exclusive, you probably won't. Like, look at a good example would be what's the guy's name? Tony? Is it Tony George? I don't know if that's a pseudonym or that's his real name. The guy who does the
Time shift
and the Ubuntu kernel installer thingy, whatever it's called. I can't remember what that's called.
UKUU. That's what he called it.
Yeah, I never get the letters right. That thing. Like he's switched to a paid model and that generates some income for him. I wouldn't expect it to retire on it's probably some nice pocket money for a hobby project. Although it depends where he lives in the world, and if he lives in a country where a few dollars is a daily income, then maybe it does provide him with a useful income. But a typical like Western nation developer who's looking for a corporate type of salary of like $100,000 or something, you've got to come up with something pretty insane to generate enough revenue.
He also got a lot of flack for turning it into a premium pro model.
Everyone does. Everyone who makes an open source project and then flips it to be like, look at how much flack the elementary guys get. You know, that.
And it really kills me because there's absolutely nothing that says that they can't charge for their time, the service of providing the software.
Right.
I mean, like you said, Krita or whoever is putting their software out in a store that's a convenience for someone, and they pay for that convenience. If you want to go and compile it from source, the open source license makes it so that the code is available and you can go and do that, or you can fork it, or you can do whatever you want with it. But the point is they put extra time into packaging something or providing support or providing some sort of service, and they should be okay with asking for financial reimbursement for that. And every time that someone is called out as, you know, being a profiteer, or it always gets, it really annoys me that someone who puts the effort into something that is a useful project to lots of people is not allowed. Like, it's like there's some unwritten law that says, no, you can't possibly benefit from that. You know, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
I think that's where the elementary guys have it right from the outset. Like, it's very clear, like, we need to be paid for this stuff. We're doing work. We'd like to be able to pay rent and eat food. So, you know, here's the price point, and please pay the developers who make all the other applications. And because it's all upfront and it's not just a donate button hidden somewhere, it's, you know, it's upfront. I mean, there are other ways to do it, of course, like lock the software up with a key that, you know, you have to pay for or something. But I think the elementary guys are doing, I mean, obviously, with all the recent tweets and the drama that's going on over there, I don't know that they're generating enough money, but they're generating some, and they have been for some time.
And their approach of doing like the whole $10 thing where you can just do $10 and that's enough. Like, the fact that they're not making it like, here's this massive amount of money that you have to pay. It's a reasonable amount. And also, some people will do the custom. But the way that they approach it, I've seen people complain about this, and I understand the complaint because there's not a free download thing until you hit 0. But I've seen people who don't recognize, like, the reason why this was a good idea is because a lot of people who are going to download this will think they can you know, trick the system, they can game the system, but not try to game it completely. They'll put like, well, what if I put $1? Will it work? And the answer is yes. So they think they're gaming the system, even though they're actually not. They're still contributing in some way. So it's a small amount, but it still is something. And that I think that's the reason why they did it.
I remember hearing an interview with it was either Cassidy. I'm not sure who it was, but they said that single change on the website, when they changed from having a, you know, donate and then having a free button next to it where you actually had to put in 0, they saw a tremendous jump in the amount of people that actually paid for it, because it made people stop and think, you know, how do I feel about putting a 0 in there? Is that fair? Should I maybe just put $1 or $5 or $20? Like, it made people actually think about the value of something versus just clicking the button mindlessly like they had been doing.
Yeah. But the other model is the one that Mint have got, where they don't punch you in the face with a thing that asks you for money. They just ask for money, you know, and please donate. And when you look at the reports that they show how much money they're generating a ton of money, because they've got like 500,000 users, and their users like what the Linux Mint developers do, and so they're willing to chuck some money. And you look at some of the recurring, like, when you look at the reports, some of these people are recurring and sending thousands to Linux Mint in order to keep the project that they like going.
Yep.
They also do a sponsorship system too, which other projects should, you know, contact companies and try to do sponsorships and stuff too, for like, especially with companies who make money off of the thing that they're making. Like, there are some projects where you could want to donate, and you would absolutely willing to donate anytime, whatever. There's a project that I use every week that I make content, and I cannot donate to them.
Isn't that crazy? Yep.
Give me the option, and
I know.
I will give you so much that it's kind of ridiculous because it is so critical to my work. But I can't because it doesn't allow me as the option.
I've run that into that so many times. I remember years ago looking at Latte Doc, and no, actually, I think he actually did end up putting in like LibrePay or something like that. But yeah, it happens all the time where you go and I can't even buy you a coffee. Like, how do I contribute? And I guess they just don't even think about it. So,
well, sometimes it's just complicated because when I was thinking about this, I contacted one of the projects that I have this situation with, and one of them said that they are working to do it, but it is so complicated without having some kind of company behind it or a foundation behind it to justify the legal entity aspect of collecting money. So that's one of the things that I think the Open Collective is such a great service because it solves a lot of that. It doesn't solve everything, but it solves a lot of that factor that they could just create an Open Collective campaign, and the entity aspects, they could do like this host entity. It's very complicated and I barely understand it. There's this host entity system where your collections are going under this foundation or this company, and then you can then get it dispersed to you as an individual. So it becomes like an income thing rather than a company entity system. So like that sort of stuff is really cool that exists, but that's only been around for a few years anyway. So like there's not that many projects that, use it. I mean, there's a lot of projects that use it, but there's a ton that totally should. But even then they'd have to figure out the nuances of it.
So is it just a cultural thing then? Like how do we get past this,
I think part of it is the cultural thing where people there's an expectation of free. Like I've heard this Linux thing is free, and from that everything within it is free, right? There's that. There's also, you've got to remember that the model of software has changed, and whereas 20, 30 years ago you would walk into a shop and buy a cardboard box that had some kind of media in it,
right? And
you would pay for that, and you would walk home with it, and you owned that, and that was yours forevermore. Whereas now people just don't do that. So, well, yeah, almost for it. And now, if you think about all the big pieces of software that people pay for, they're all subscription services.
Yep.
Spotify, Slack, these are
all the Adobe products.
Right? Yeah, they're all subscription products, and so people have the expectation that the software is free, and so it's, unless you've got some value add that you can subscribe to something, which is what this Ventoy developer is clearly doing, is adding a subscription model, which is very current. Unless you could do that, it's very difficult. And if your software is open source and it is in a repository somewhere, it's very difficult to then flip those people who are downloading something, using Pacman or Synaptic or whatever, into paying customers.
And also it makes them think that they're getting the software from the distros rather than the developers of the distro or the software itself. And it creates this confusion, especially when you have like I'm not going to say this is true for everything, but projects that I've been a part of where I'm trying to get a distro to update an app, and they will directly tell me no, like, we don't care, go away. And that application now has thousands of people using it, complaining about a feature that we fixed a year ago, and that sort of thing is one of the things that I like the universal formats for, is because that problem is no longer a problem. And there are other issues, but whatever, but that particular thing is infuriating for developers. And when they get support reports of like, hey, this is broken, well, don't worry, in 6 months to a year and a half, you will eventually get the fix that we fixed a year ago. Like that sort of thing is just crazy that it's a problem. But then they kind of blame the app developer once they find the thing, like, oh, this is your fault, you didn't fix it. Like, we did. And there's been mechanisms to kind of bypass all that sort of stuff, but it's just another factor. But I think the point about the free software expectation is the cause of that problem is that we call it free software, and that is a terrible, 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 terrible name. It has always been awful. The reason open source even exists as a term is because free software is a terrible name. Okay, sorry. I'll get off my.
Yeah, Jamie Zawinski, the guy who created X Screensaver, has lamented about this problem, that there are people out there with Debian, and it's got an old version of X Screensaver in it, and he can't get Debian to update it, and he can't get Debian to remove it. And so he gets emails because his email address is in the about box for X Screensaver, and he gets emails from me, I'm angry that your screensaver crashes or, is unsafe or whatever.
Right.
And yeah, there's nothing he can do about it.
Yeah.
Because it's in the repo.
It's also a weird problem of having open source software. That people can take put it in your distro, even if you don't want them to. Like there's one project I was a part of that the app was broken in this distro and they didn't care to fix it. And I'm like, okay, just remove it. And because we'll provide a solution to download the thing directly. We'll provide a deb or we'll provide an RPM or whatever, which we did already anyway. And they said, no, we're going to ship it anyway. Like, but you're creating problems for nothing.
There are some pieces of software that have been removed, like I can only speak from Ubuntu, but I'm sure it happens in other distros. Like OwnCloud got in contact with Canonical and said, the version in the repositories is super old and you're not going to update it. Can you please remove it? And so OwnCloud was just completely removed from the archive. So it's not there anymore. And there's been plenty of occasions of companies. I think there's an antivirus software that was removed as well. There's all kinds of those kind of things that move fast,
and also need to. Yeah.
Prophetic, you have your hand up.
So I'm wondering, how do you see things working in the corporate part of the financing? So so to be more explicit, my customers do a data center product that's making about billions for them, and it was based on CentOS up until they moved the project. They reorganized the project.
The CentOS.
And when that happened, they said, "Oh, we need to pay for the Red Hat. Oh, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna move to Ubuntu." That was the main reason for moving to Ubuntu, and it's a huge effort to move to the product to Ubuntu. They prefer to do that instead of paying for the work to Red Hat. And of course, we don't have the manpower to maintain packages ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's actually a very interesting discussion in terms of like that the change that caused is interesting because Red Hat handled it very poorly. Like they should have managed the communication aspects much better. But what they did was very smart to do because CentOS was basically a terrible project for them because all it did was take, hey, here's Red Hat and now take it for free and give us nothing. Like that as a business, the business minded approach, that's not good. And it makes sense for them to switch it around and make it a development base because it also benefits the entire community and ecosystem because the CentOS system was not, no one could contribute to it. It was locked in a thing of it has to be RHEL. Whereas now CentOS is something that companies can actually contribute to and developers can join to work on it. And then also indirectly, and also sometimes completely directly, fix and improve Red Hat itself. And then Red Hat's like, well, now we're also going to give it for free with Red Hat, a certain amount for free, or depending on your category of what you need it for free. They just didn't do it. They did it in this weird rollout of like every few months they would give more and more information. And it was so confusing that people didn't really know what was changing, and that CentOS Stream is still just as viable to use as regular CentOS Linux, because all you got to do is say, okay, I don't want to move past this snapshot, because that snapshot is Red Hat, and then you just lock it until the next point release comes out, and that's all you have to do, and then boom, you have CentOS again. No need to move the entire ecosystem at all. But we were like, well, Red Hat just made it a terrible decision, and I would argue Red Hat doesn't have to care in any way whatsoever about this reaction, about people leaving to Ubuntu or SUSE or whatever, because they weren't making any money in the first place, regardless of the CentOS usage. Like, it really didn't affect them monetarily in any way at all, because all they did was stop using something for free and go to something else for free. They could, if they knew, they could have gone to Stream or one of the clones or whatever. But it's like a weird problem of the ultimate result is 10 times better than what it was, but it took so long to get to it, just like my explanation of this topic, that you didn't really see how good it could have been.
Sorry, I zoned out.
I did too. What were we talking about?
Oh, I zoned out halfway through. That's why
Did
I was.
You too? Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate when that happens.
Another thing is that the company is making a lot of money and cannot pay for the license for one Linux distribution. Right?
Well,
it's arguably fine that some people can't afford to do it at a certain scale, but
and to be fair, like, there is definitely, like, so the corporate licensing. So, if you have SQL Server or, some like major enterprise license, those are hugely expensive. I mean, almost to a ridiculous point. And so, free open source or free software is certainly appealing just from a financial standpoint. But if the only motivation that you're making is just by saving money, that's not really it's not the best way to make decisions, especially on software. I mean, Bogdan, to hear like that they wanted to completely re-platform just because, they didn't want to pay for something I don't know.
It's unfortunate for sure.
Yeah, it is. In the end,
they're willing to pay for that migration, which is probably not cheap.
No. Well, and then the idea is, we've been talking about end users and, buying a license for Krita or something like that. But, the idea is that these large corporations, and we've seen headlines around this with, what is it, MariaDB? Is that, or MongoDB?
MongoDB, yeah.
Yeah, where, Amazon AWS is essentially reselling open source software and making billions of dollars doing it, and there's absolutely zero benefit to MongoDB. That's a tough.
Same with Redis. Amazon did the same thing to Redis.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very difficult position to be in, because your user base is coming to you by way of these companies that are selling your product for money that you're giving away for nothing, essentially. And there has to be some fair middle ground there. I mean, I don't know how. I don't know with the licensing or, what type of arrangement could be made, but it just seems like, to me, if your corporation is making money, directly off of that software, there should be some pathway for either a portion of that revenue, or there has to be some good that comes of that from the upstream project, in my opinion.
I have a question for the floor.
Okay.
So if you, like, what's your opinion of the open source approach of someone? Like, is it anti-open source? Is it a hypocritical aspect? Is it a pivot away from the actual purpose of open source for something to do what Redis did, where they took an open source project, turned it to an open core project? So the core basis of the foundation of the project is still open, but all the plugins are proprietary and commercial.
I have no problem with that.
Redis is a framework for managing systems, and it's more of like an enterprise thing that allows AWS to do what it does for managing all its clients and stuff, like with their containers and whatnot. But what changes is that the same thing that MongoDB is kind of doing, where they turn it into an open core. So everything that makes it work functionally by its base of the core system, that's still open.
I mean, I've been using WordPress for a long time, and that's pretty much the premium plugin model for WordPress. They have the free version, which has a limited set of functionality that is useful in and of itself. But then if you want to do certain things above and beyond, then you pay for the premium plugin. And that's just, I mean, that model seems to work very well in that instance, but I don't know that that's, you know, something that would apply elsewhere. But I don't mind that open core model. You have your, you know, enterprise or your community edition. That's another one. They'll say open core or community edition, that type of thing. And then, yeah, if you want any type of service on top of that, or if you want any type of, you know, packaging, we've talked about that, you know, anything that's a value add, then paying for it seems to make sense.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting point, because what I was thinking about is not the value add thing, is to do what Redis did specifically, is because they were completely open and then they turned some things not open. Do you think that would be a hypocritical statement, or do you think that's also justified because the whole point is that you're making these components?
I think it depends largely on what it is that they changed.
Well, so this is relevant to Nate right now because he's doing stuff with FreeCAD.
Yep.
And he's trying to give back to, you know, contribute to FreeCAD and have them be able to develop, you know, I'll let you explain it, Nate.
So I grew up, you could say, in my CAD life on commercial software, and specifically the one that I used for most of my professional life has been something called Pro Engineer or Creo or Wildfire, depending on what era, but Pro E is what it's called. And so there's certain functions that it just does very well. And I don't want to spend, and it's last time I checked, and it's probably less than this now, but it was like $10,000 a seat per year. I don't want to spend that kind of money to do, you know, goofball projects of mine where I'm designing things. It's not worth it. So I'm using FreeCAD. And what I like, and it actually is a very good parametric modeler, but it's only parametric in the academic sense. It's not really parametric. It says it is, but it's really not. Because if I change a parameter up in the tree, it breaks everything below it. So it's parametric, but you have to redefine a lot of things. Things get lost and shift around. It's a bit frustrating.
So it's not, it's a destructive method of parametric.
Well, no, it's parametric. It just don't change anything.
Right. Well, I mean, like the non-destructive versus destructive is like when you do non-destructive, it like automatically updates based on everything.
You're trying to make that image parallel, and it's not exactly the same, but yeah.
It's technically, it is parametric, but the problem is like a reference, if I change a feature, it shifts the reference numbers. And when the reference numbers shift, then it shifts where the parameters are defined. So yes, it is parametric, but it's shifting. So something is not right there. Anyway, so I've actually been enjoying it for this project. It's been frustrating at times that I've had to walk away from it, so I wouldn't do anything I'd regret, you know, because I'm not always a cool cucumber. Sometimes I can be a little bit of a not cool cucumber. Mm-hmm. And anyway, so I'm compiling a list of like, I don't want to say grievances, but grievances that I have with FreeCAD. But I think that they're all workable. I think that it's got a fine foundation. You know, it actually does a really good job. It just has all these little, I don't know if paper cut's the right issue, right. Maybe like uncurled staples, because those really hurt when you grab onto them. So a little more than paper cut. So I want to try and help out. I do actually, I'm a patron of one of the developers that I use the modules he works on, and I'm looking for other developers that I can support to get different features, make different functions fixed. Mm. And so that's what I'm on the search for now, because I have no problem funding to a large degree the development of fixing these things, because not only would it help me, but help other people. You know, because like some people, you know, the whole digital divide discussion that we've had in the past on Destination Linux, where, you know, Linux and open source closes that digital divide. And I think CAD is an area that still has a huge divide in there right now, because, you know, we have 3D printers that are open source. You can build CNC machines that are all open source. All these things are open source, but you got to try and give it a 3-dimensional image or a tool path, and that's not always open source to create that. Mm. So I think it would be really great. You know, FreeCAD will probably never be as good as Creo, possibly, but I think it could be close. I think it has the potential to be close. It has the features. It just doesn't have all the features, you know, like all the functions. So that's my ambition now, is to find developers. And I was actually looking today, just now, for who that I can to contribute and like say, can you fix this particular issue? and what would it cost to do that? How can I help fund that fix?
Almost like
basically.
a bug bounty or something.
Yeah, they don't have that. I
Yeah.
looked,
Okay.
unless I didn't look. Maybe I didn't look very well. No, prophetic. What did you say?
So I was just, this really speaks close to my heart, because I've been part of projects too where I was in a similar capacity, and I used to think like, oh, this project admits there's a gap. This project admits it needs marketing and communication, but then when there's a pathway to provide it, it kind of just falls by the wayside. And I used to think that all these projects, if they just have better marketing, it'll solve all their problems. And now I'm thinking it doesn't need better marketing. It needs more better communication standards or communication strategies, because it's such a we're at this place where the landscape for that gap that you're talking about, Nate, for some projects it's widening, some it's shortening, and that's great. But I wonder if the position that you're talking about while you're advocating to get it enhanced is like, maybe these FOSS projects needs a new position involved. So you have the core developer and a founder, that's one thing, but maybe they need to be paired with a new position. Maybe it's called like, software steward advocate, where you're helping steward the product map of that software, and the core developers working on the developer on the technical side. But you kind of need someone on the other side that can really pair it well with, to find these gaps and advocate for these features. And when the time comes, yes, even advocate for funding pathways, because that's a big frustration of mine as well, that I kind of like post a lot about, is that a lot of projects fail, not because they're technically failures, or a lot of times the technology that they're building is better, but they literally just do not have that strength or skill set and the self-awareness to pull other people in and say, hey, I need help with this, but I don't want to be a bottleneck for it. Can you run with it? And what if, Nate, if you became that person for that project, I'm sure that project would be see leaps and bounds. The problem is a lot of these core devs, whether it's just nature of the FOSS underpinnings of the culture, or just for whatever reason, they are really scared of letting go of control for marketing communications. And it's really devastating for a lot of project potential.
Yeah, for sure. So I have this, I'll go ahead and say it here, since I don't know how many people, I'm not on YouTube, so I can't tell how many people are watching, but I am in the process of starting a business, to like a small degree, a manufacturing business out of my cubicle labs here, my shop. And I want to be a completely, from just possible, an open source from bottom up business. So I'm in the process of building a CNC right now that can do, very complex things. I could even do laser cutting or plasma cutting with it if necessary. But I'm starting with just the mill head right now, and I've already got work lined up for it. I've got everything. A lot of the pieces are in place. I just got to build a machine, and then I have to be able to offer a service of design service. And I wanted to use FreeCAD as much as possible, but sometimes I'm getting some serious headache from FreeCAD, just because if I make a change, it blows the whole model up. Which that happens in commercial products too. So that's not unique to FreeCAD, but it's a little bit more excessive in FreeCAD. And yeah, I'm actually going to I want to complete my list of things. I'm working on a fairly complex project, you could say. But the idea, I'll release all the designs on Thingiverse for free, I know, Creative Commons or whatever, or something like that. Because I want to build a resume online, because I've been doing design work for well over a decade and a half, and I don't really have a resume. I can tell people, yeah, I did design work on this, but I can't prove it, so I need to build a resume basically. And I don't like the idea. Like, I was using Fusion 360 on OpenSUSE for quite a while, but then something changed in Fusion 360, and then I couldn't, like, some of the modules stopped, like I couldn't use some of the modules like for export anymore. And then also they kind of got really ropey, which that's a term I learned from Mr. Pope there, ropey. That's one of my favorites. And so it wasn't fun to use anymore because things just weren't working properly. And so I said, I have to use an open source solution because I don't want to have to risk going away, which is actually to lead back in what Michael was talking about earlier. How would you like it if things became partially closed source or whatever? And I guess I would say, I don't know, provisionally, I would like to support the people have to make money. People have to eat, right? So how do you solve the problem of people eating and also keeping the idea of, Libre software? I think I like the term Libre better.
Much better.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
How do you keep that balance? And I think that basically people have to be responsible. Like if I start actually making money using FreeCAD, which I will, then I think it's my responsibility to fund the developers because they're funding my ability to eat. So I need to help fund their ability to eat as well, if that makes any sense.
Sure. It's a virtuous circle, right?
Yeah, people have to do that. You have to be responsible. I mean, I think it's a maturity thing, and I don't know, and that's a social thing. Now, I did also want to say that when I started in Linux, I didn't get it for free. I paid for my Power Pack boxes from Mandrake. So everyone, I chose. I had in my hand Mandrake and SUSE. I like this star better than the lizard, but I didn't know what the future was going to hold at the time. So, I mean, I always paid for it. I mean, it wasn't until, I don't know, maybe 2012 that I didn't have the ability to buy it anymore, really, like a box set. So I don't have no problem with buying a box set at all. I mean, I think or buying Linux or, supporting the companies. That's, in fact, actually now I pay for SUSE workstation or whatever. Is that what's called? I know every
the SLE
the SLE
desktop support.
Yeah, desktop. Yeah. So I pay for one seat of that, which is like $50 some every year because I want to support their because actually it was Neil who told me that if you do that, that tells SUSE that there is demand for their desktop product. And so that is why I do that. And I occasionally send, Plasma, I wish, hey, it'd be nice if Plasma, but we'll see where that goes. One seat, one guy in the United States in Michigan saying, hey, can you start supporting Plasma is not going to change the tide there.
I think we need to do it, but both of us, and then we'll set up an automatic email. So every day it sends them the same email, like, hey, you haven't responded yet. So,
I was going to say real quick, it was like, how many times have you gotten an email from these projects saying, hey, please consider a donation?
Very rare.
Rare, right? So now, how many of you would be just so offended and just PO that you got spammed that a developer of a project would dare to ask you the consideration of
I'm
a donation?
offended that you even prompted this question. Oh my
Well,
my email gets spammed by all the GitHub changes for FreeCAD every day. So I don't think if I got a spamming of, hey, would you support this project that you use? I don't think I'd be any more offended than what I already signed up for.
I would actually be ecstatic.
Exactly. Yeah. And so how much, and I had this of a previous project too, how many times do you see a website of these projects have an email list where you can opt in?
I see quite a bit where they have a mailing list where you can opt in to get information about it. And then I choose to never touch those because I can't stand mailing lists. But that's not what your question was.
No, but so here my point is, I remember there was I'm not going to mention the project, but there was an example where the project doubted that anybody, because of course, like who likes mailing lists, right? No one really does that. But so we did an experiment, we ran it, and it was successful. And people were opting in at the height, it was like 50 something a day. And you're getting a pool, and in that subscription, you get to choose. Am I a developer? Am I just a fan of the project? Am I XYZ, whatever? And so while they're subscribing to this newsletter, they're also self-identifying, and it's optional, self-identifying the nature of the use of the software, or like how they use it, what kind of audience they are. And so that would subsequently hit a different bucket in that email list. And lo and behold, in no time, we had hundreds and hundreds of people that we can at least once a year around Christmas time, because everyone gives in Christmas time, to say, hey, if you're into Christmas spirit or whatever you celebrate, consider dropping $1 or whatever. And you just, that little baby step can have a huge impact, but that doesn't happen. And there's resistance to that, and it boggles my mind. And so a lot of times, Mike, when you were kind of like going on your soapbox stuff, I think there's a time where like the soapbox stuff has to be communicated even more. And we need to start taking these conversations to the developers and saying, you're not going to last long if you keep on operating in this mechanism. I mean, you could if it's just like a side project, but if you expect to live off this stuff one day, you got to be a little more intentional. And your software is too awesome for us to like sit by and let that happen. So we want to come next to you. I think that's we got to be more vocal.
That was actually a
Very good
question
point.
I had for Nate, because anyone who's done anything with software development, it is not a simple matter of just throwing more money or more bodies at something, because it doesn't just scale infinitely. Like if you're having a software issue, or if you're trying to build something, adding more developers or funding it more doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to exponentially move things faster. Like it doesn't really work that way.
Right.
Now, if you're underfunded, then yes, I mean, it will affect the ability to do anything. But if you're overfunding something is possible as well, which doesn't sound
Diminishing returns.
right.
Yeah.
So Nate, in terms of when you look at a project like FreeCAD, I'm actually thinking, because when we talked about it a little bit, I was wondering, is it a matter of just more man hours? Is it a matter of more funding? Is it a matter of focusing their
Technical
attention?
problem?
Like
Probably a focus. I mean, so people work on things that mean the most to them, essentially, right? And so there's a lot of modules in FreeCAD. It's a very extensible framework for all different sorts of engineering activities. So the question really is like, what is it going to take to get the part design module improved so that this doesn't happen? A very clear focus goal is probably what it needs. And then, I can go through the code and try and help, but when it comes to like being able to understand other people's code, I am probably about as useless as a screen door on a submarine.
Yeah.
So,
well,
That
so
does seem pretty useless.
Prophetic. So
if it's above ground, if I bought it's okay.
Prophetic mentioned the idea of a software like an advocate, and when I think of that, I think of Nate Graham for Plasma, and like the way that he sort of like all the bugs existed, right? And it was a matter of someone actually like looking at things, prioritizing them, and getting specific things laid out in a logical order, and then working through that list. And like I think that was his was like a year or two that they did that officially, and that was to me a pretty successful thing, because before they started there was a very noticeable death by 1,000 paper cuts situation, and as they went through it, they addressed a lot of those little annoyances, and that was that. So to me, that's one of those instances where one person, and I'm not saying he's the only one who did it, but he's the one that really came in and looked at things and provided a lot of like focus and guidance. And so, Nate, because you have that background of knowing what the commercial products give you and maybe where FreeCAD is failing, and to be able to say like, these are the things that need to be in place for this to be a viable solution.
That sounds like a really cool place for me to try and plug myself in. I just have to figure out the process for doing that. I mean, outside of reading the GitHub change, like all the change emails, because unlike Michael, I like email. I hate going to websites for and stuff.
Oh, no. Let me clarify. I hate mailing lists because they never stop. Newsletters like Prophetic was talking about, those are fine because they're at most once a week. That's okay.
I love mailing lists.
3,000 a day if you're lucky.
Yeah. So I like mailing lists because I can see all the things that are happening. I don't read them all, but I can say, okay, that's this issue. Then I just delete them. And it's kind of like a morning ritual for me. I got 80 items here from FreeCAD. Let me read through them. Anyway, so I don't know. I mean, if I have a problem with it, it's incumbent upon me to actually try and make a difference. I think that'd be my responsibility. How to do that yet? I think I need to focus. Let me finish my current project and then compile my list of issues and then approach the project. I'll just start I'll go on the GitHub and I'll just start asking like feature request stuff and just go that route with it and see what happens. Maybe I can help. Maybe I can figure out a way to help. Maybe someone can hold my hand a little bit and I can help out with the project. Who knows? Maybe I might get an actual skill out of it. That'd be cool.
That'd be nice. Yeah. The approach of like, if you have an issue with an application, to contact the team that's working on, like there was in the live chat earlier today during the stream of the Saloon, when we first started, there was a conversation of someone talking about an application that they didn't like it, but they didn't specify what it was. So I asked some more information, and then they said it was like, there was just like basically a bug. So my suggestion was to contact the team who made the project, because if there's a bug that significant, they probably want to know about it and probably want to fix it. Right. So there's things kind of things where, some people, like, there is an interesting thing that Prophetic was talking about in terms of needing to have a new position of a project. And like, there are so many, like there's basically 3 positions I think that are absolutely necessary for every open source project. There's obviously the developer. There's obviously like a project manager. And then also I think there's the front person. So the marketer, the communications person, whatever you want to call it. Another thing that's constantly kind of ignored is designers, in terms of like, a lot of projects look at it as like, we want to make it look how we want. And I think these 4 pieces are something that would make the ideal solution. But at least the 3 of the communications and because you can make something that doesn't look amazing, but it looks okay, and that would still be enough. And like that would make the approach of having these projects much more viable. And you were talking about the example of KDE, Eric, where for one, let me summarize what Eric was saying. He was saying Plasma's the best, and then also, but
right, makes sense.
Yeah, that's what I heard. So the way that Nate Graham was doing it was really interesting, because it was a problem that people were aware of, but it's also something that, the developers gotten used to the way it works sometimes. And this applies to a lot of projects. They're just not thinking about the paper cuts or the staples that have been removed and they're slightly curled, that kind of thing.
Ouch.
Yeah, those are out. But they're not thinking about it because they've already kind of worked around it. And I think that it's having someone take that position. Nate Graham referred to it as bug triaging, and that is what it is. But it also is way more of like having someone that you can contact and say, "Can you explain to the developers the problem?" And I think that's a important piece that isn't there, and that's like a communications manager and whatever you want to call it.
We traditionally call that developer advocate.
Okay,
so that's what you did.
Developer advocate.
I was just about to ask Popey, why do you think there's such a gap? You've been in this space for so long. It's been a pain point for this so long. We've seen so many projects come and go. Why is it that we have such a hard time learning from our history about this area?
Well, specifically the developers don't have good marketing.
That, and therefore strategic ideas of like how to steward. I like to use the term stewardship, product stewardship of their Frost project, to outsource a little bit or partner.
So I work on an open source project, and the team has a product manager and an engineering manager / developer advocate. That's me, and then a bunch of engineers. And if the engineers are left to their own devices, they'll go and hack on things that scratch their itch and, fix bugs, approve pull requests, review people's code, whatever's interesting to them that makes the project better. And yeah, I agree. You need some strategic direction, but someone needs to be paid to do that. Or someone needs, you need to find a person who's going to do that. And that's hard. Because the people who are working on these projects are software developers who are scratching an itch, and someone who's outside of that, who isn't a developer and who isn't having an itch scratched by that project, trying to motivate that person. What's their motivation? Why are they wanting to get involved in this project and do that job? What's in it for them? right? The developer, there's certainly something in it for them because they're scratching an itch, they're developing a thing they enjoy doing. There's maybe a creative side of it, whatever it is. That it's very easy to see how there's a motivating factor for a developer to work on a project. Getting someone to do the strategic direction for a project, that's harder. That's a lot harder because it's harder to find people who are bought into it and who are part of the project or feel part of the project. For me, it's easy because I'm paid to. It's my job, right? I work on an open source project along with 5 other people, and we're all paid to do it by the company. But for an open source project where there is no income, what's the motivator?
I mean, there's a motivator of the same value that you appreciate it, right? What about the, like, I've joined projects that, in the past because I just appreciated the work and I wanted to do it. But there's also the biggest problem, I think, for what Prophetic's asking is there's the barrier of the developers who want to scratch an itch. Once they've scratched it for themselves, they're not really sometimes not interested in making it better. Like it already accomplishes what they want to do.
And that's okay in my book, if that's what they want. But these projects have lofty goals and lofty claims on their website. But then when it's time to cook in the kitchen, they kind of make it feel like, oh, I scratched my itch, to your point. So yeah.
Sure. I'm just saying, like, there's times where I've tried to contribute to certain projects and they've kind of dismissed my request. Like sometimes they'll dismiss it in a way that's basically I offer something specific and then they go, well, you could do this instead. That's not what I wanted to do. Or
well, that's the traditional open source problem of herding cats, is because any open source project is a giant pile of cats who all want to pull in a different direction, and trying to get them all to pull in the same direction is hard when people are motivated for different reasons. Now, when you're at a company like when I was at Canonical, right, we had a bunch of stakeholders for the Ubuntu desktop. And those would be people like the enterprise OEMs like Dell and Lenovo. They have a say. They come to us and say, hey, it would be really good if, I don't know, fingerprint readers worked, right? Whatever, it doesn't matter. And then you have community people who say, hey, it would be really good if the installer was smaller or it installed faster or there's some other requirement. And then there are the legal people who say, hey, it'd be really good if you didn't put this software on the CD because that's going to be a problem for it. And so you've got all these requests coming in. And there is someone there to balance those things. You have project managers, engineering managers, senior developers who've been around a time and who can help coerce the project. But in an open source project where nobody is anyone's boss, like it's hard to do that when they're not in a corporate environment. Some projects do it really, really well, and they have a good community, a solid community where people will delegate tasks to other developers, and it works really well in some places.
Like who? Like which ones?
Well, for a long while, it worked well with Ubuntu. Up until about 2014, it worked really well in Ubuntu. And we would have community people who would say, hey, I would like to do something. What can I do? And we would give them a laundry list of things to do. And they would go and find a thing. But because the project was so big, there was lots of things that lots of people could get involved in. And if they said, oh, well, that's not a thing I want to do, it's like, well, here's one of the other 10 things you could do, right? With a really small project, it's harder to do that because you don't necessarily have, maybe your project isn't translated, and so there are no translations. Maybe you don't have documentation, or it's very limited. It's a single man page or something. Like on a big project like Ubuntu, it works well because there's tons of different things to do. But on a small project, it's very difficult when there's a single developer and someone comes along and says, hey, I want to do this. And the developer's thinking, I've got a wish list of things I would love to get done. And your thing that you've come to me with isn't on that list. And so it's hard for the developer to say, actually, I don't want that. Thanks very much. But sometimes they have to say it.
Sure. I think that my example is more of like, I went to some big projects that were, in the space that I wanted to contribute to. And one of the projects I went to was really open to what I wanted. And once I got involved, I realized, well, the person I talked to was really open to it, but the other people involved were not.
Bingo. Yeah.
So I was given like a little bit of power, and then when I got more and more involved, it was like,
Clip your
okay,
wings.
this is
buddy.
gonna backfire. And in fact, I actually left that project and went to a completely different thing that I use now, because of that. Because that experience just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. But
And that's not unusual in small projects. Like I say, with small projects
it wasn't a small project. It was a massive project. I won't
Well,
specify.
how massive
but it
is
was
massive? Like you've got curl at one end and you've got Ubuntu at the other end. Like one is 1, one is 10.
Let's go with a 7 or an 8.
Okay. Maybe then project management isn't very good. Like,
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
definitely agree with that.
Yeah, that's a reality, right? Some, just like anybody in our jobs, you know, you always got that one person like, how do they still have a job? I think we're going to have a lot of that in these projects. What I think the overall narrative is, and maybe we're just so invested that we feel butthurt that our ideas aren't absorbed. But I think there's something to be said that over the landscape, it seems, of these FOSS projects, that there's a huge need, and a lot of smart people who are working on these projects are technically smart, have just missed the message that it's the most logical thing to do is to kind of share some governance or share some decision-making power about these other aspects, about features, about the product roadmap, and formalize that relationship.
People get burned by that as well. Like,
yeah,
some guy came along and wanted to help us out and did a load of stuff and was like a whirling dervish or like a Tasmanian devil and ran around and touched 100 things and then disappeared off the planet. And so developers can get burned by people coming and volunteering and offering a lot and then delivering not much.
Yeah, and the consistency, even if they deliver a little bit in front, they can't maintain it. And I think that goes back to project management. I know for organizations that I manage, there's volunteers who romanticize this aspect of the work. And this is actually when I used to work in higher ed. And they would say, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I would literally have to say, I would love that, but we have to do this first, and then we'll see. Let's go see from there. So I think that even that nuance part, Alan, is part of good project management, is not letting the derby guy who's like so caught up in the honeymoon phase of the project not run away that way. That you have to kind of throttle them a little bit and then wait and see. And if they make it for like 6 months to a year of consistent impact, then hey, then we can give that person more. We know we can do it. But I mean, imagine like Linux Mint, like they have some change. You know, I think they cleared 10 to 15K a month. They might better. Be, yeah, they might quite be often better. They can afford a part-time developer advocate / product analysts, you know, to analyze the bugs that are coming in and say, wow, we had a spike in these bugs. Let's see if that's worthy of a recommendation of doing X, Y, and Z. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But I don't know. I just feel like there's answers to these things. And if we're smart enough to use Google to solve technical problems, I think these core developers are smart enough to say, hey, let me pick up some things in this area to at least have a radar or a sense of what the bar is, to say, hey, this person who can help me out with this has these skills, which I don't, and I want to have this person help me out. I think we can get there. I just think we have to call it out more, and I think we've got to be more intentional. And that's why I think we're onto something here with a more formalized, maybe we don't call it a developer advocate, but project advocate or a product advocate. I don't know, but I think it's time we start being a little more intentional, more communicative with these core developers and say, hey, I think it's time to make room at the table for your project. And it's only for your best interest as well, and see what happens. At least start the conversation.
Thinking about that. Like when I joined one project, I asked him like, how many donations have you had? And the guy said, probably like $15. I'm like, you mean like a month or something? No, ever. Like what? How long you been doing it? Like 5-6 years. Why do you think you only got that much? And he's like, I don't know. Like, how many times have you asked? Never. Well, that's why. So I said, okay, how about this? We'll make a change in the app so that it will just ping them and say, hey, would you like to donate? And that's it. No more. One time.
One
And
time.
it turned it from 15, 15 ever to 15 a day, sometime, depending on the month. It would turn it into like an actual viable option for him. And it was just a conversation of him not thinking that it's something worthy of being donated to.
Bingo. That example at scale can transform FOSS landscape over like within weeks. That if at that idea, what Mike just showcased, can turn around so many projects. And I don't know, maybe I think the overarching, of course, there's always exceptions to the rule, but I think more free software, more FOSS software, or the FOSS landscape, more of that is better for users in general, even when they don't even know the impact they're having. Like people who use Firefox and don't even know it, like the impact we can have on people is tremendous if we just scale that. And I don't know, Popey, I think you have a lot of pull and influence and potentially in the space to really talk this aspect up. And I don't know,
I'm
maybe
not
you
sure
could be
I
the
do.
maybe you
Do
could be the
you know what I
face.
find amusing is that you were talking about money, and then you said free software, and then you stopped yourself and corrected yourself and said FOSS. And you know the F in FOSS stands for free software. So
Yeah, no,
like,
because that free and open source, it includes both.
I know.
That's
It just
yeah.
it made me chuckle a bit because
The
we're
irony,
like
yeah.
trying not to
Yep.
like use that word, and it's so baked into everything. Like,
Yeah,
why
yeah.
Libra software is so important to everybody. Embrace that term because of how bad the free software thing is embraced already. And
Yeah.
like you said, it's baked into this to the ecosystem and the community. Like the Libra software solves the problem completely. Libre, whatever. It solves the problem entirely, and it also removes I think the worst part about the free software thing is the quality is just diminished. People think that because it's free, it's bad. With just a $5 fee, it's I could pay $5. That's fine.
Bingo.
It
Yeah.
sounds like it's better just because of that.
Yeah. I still nominate Pope as the face of this new movement that we're making right now.
No pressure.
no thanks. So interestingly, like as Michael was saying about applications adding a thing that punches the user in the face to get money out of them. If you look at Calibre, the ebook reader,
Yep,
it's got a button in the application, and when you download it, there's a button that says, support this application, send me money. That's his full-time job. Like the guy who's maintaining that. And again, this is another example of a cross-platform application. The vast majority of Calibre's users are on Windows. They're not on Linux.
mm-hmm.
And there's a theme here.
Yeah.
If you want to make money, appeal to Windows users because there's a ton of them, and they do have some money spread among the few billion of them that there are. Take that money and use that and invest it in Linux.
Yeah,
That's a good model too. That's a fair model.
Yeah.
They make bad suggestions of their operating system, but they make good decisions based on the fact that they use open source still sometimes.
Bingo.
But it's an interesting point about those applications that are Windows specific, or at least they have a ability to do the cross-platform thing. Because the project I was talking about with the donations, or the very little donations, then it was also cross-platform. Like, well, it's only Linux and Windows, but it's still cross-platform. And the people we've had people ask over the years of, hey, when are you going to get a Mac version? Like, when we have Macs to make it. So we don't have a Mac, we can't do it. That's it.
I was thinking about that too.
I had a when the new M1 Max came out, my daughter has one for college, and she got it like relatively early on when after all the reviews said yes, it's a good machine. So I got her one. And someone filed an issue on an open source project that I work on saying, please make builds for Apple M1 chips, because we only did binary builds for AMD 64 Macs. And I thought, well, this is tricky because no one on the team has got an M1 Mac. And so I thought, well, how are we going to do this? And then I thought, I have a solution here. So I went to my daughter's laptop and I created a user account for myself because there was only an account for her. I created an account for myself, enabled SSH access, and then came back into this room. And then via SSH, so that I didn't have to sit in her bedroom all the time or didn't have to steal her laptop from her, via SSH to her M1 Mac, I cloned the Git repository and did the build and made sure that it all worked. And then we then set the bots in place to, to make it build professionally. It doesn't, the project doesn't build on my daughter's laptop every day. I just built it once on her laptop and tested it on her laptop. And I was like,
be like, cooler if it did.
Yeah, it would actually. I might have to phone my daughter up and, can you turn your laptop back on, please? You're hampering our release schedule.
But I'm watching Netflix right now.
But yeah, sometimes you have to use creative means to get stuff working in open source.
Well, small example of that too, though, is a
prophetic
campaign, a short-term campaign of like fundraising for developers.
You went quiet for a bit there.
Prophetic, we lost you for about a good 10 seconds. Start over.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, start over with the thing you find interesting.
Oh, that was that for that product advocate or developer advocate position, like a short-term small baby wins could be fundraising for developers for devices, like new diverse hardware. I can totally see that happening in a more formalized fashion. Although it's, hijacking your kid's laptop is also a good starting point too, though.
I remember talking about that years ago, though, honestly, because we were having that same discussion about high DPI support and the fact, 4K monitors and all that stuff. And the developers were just saying, well, we don't have hardware to test that on. So, I mean, how can we even, troubleshoot things? And I just thought to myself, okay, so how can we make an impact in open source development? Why don't we just buy machines for these developers? It's not that expensive. A couple $1,000s for a high-end workstation and a decent, monitor for folks. That's a very achievable goal, Now,
the only difference here, though, is that it has to come in pairing. It has to be paired with the blessing of the core developer. Like, it has to be kind of like more formal, that relationship and where that communication comes from, because this rando over here who claims he's fundraising for the developer without really being officially associated or have the blessing, some people might be hesitant to officially give. So that's where it's like, take that idea and like kind of turn it up a couple notches with that relationship more formalized, and that can be a nice small win to beta test this idea of a product advocate. But yeah,
buying hardware also only solves one problem at one time for one developer. It's it doesn't scale particularly well. Early on in Ubuntu, there was a project within Canonical where people could apply for a laptop. People in the community could just apply for a laptop, and Canonical would buy one and just send it to them. And someone in the community, would then receive a laptop, and the expectation was that they would do some contribution, whatever it was, testing or software development or whatever it might be, right? And over a period of time, a fair number of laptops were purchased. And there were also people who were requesting GPUs because they need testing, like graphics drivers need testing and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And it got really expensive really fast because, when you have a whole bunch of people spread around the world and everyone's clamoring to get a laptop, which for a lot of these people, I'm not saying they were disingenuous when they were making their requests, but for a lot of them, they probably weren't using that laptop very often. And to spend like $1,000 or whatever it was for a laptop that's basically going to sit on a desk a lot of the time and only get pulled out now and then to do a bit of testing is quite a lot. I think that $1,000 could probably be invested in other ways that would be more beneficial to the entire team rather than sitting on the desk of one developer. I'm not saying don't buy hardware, because there's certainly value in buying hardware. Like the Nouveau driver developers, lots of video cards were sent to them of all different flavors of NVIDIA cards. And, that helped them. And eventually they said, please stop sending us video cards because we've got a lot of video cards. We don't need any more.
Got it.
Martin Wimpress actually did a good in between where I remember the interview. He mentioned how he would just pay for. He found a developer friend that he knew who actually had the high DPI stuff, and actually just commissioned him to fix some of these issues.
And that's what he does with Ubuntu Mate. He has a few developers, trusted developers, who have other jobs and have paying salaries, but he has specific atomic bite-sized pieces of functionality that he would like to be done.
Bingo.
And pays them for a specific piece of work.
Got it.
And that comes from the donations that people give to Ubuntu Mate.
That's really smart. Yeah, that's a smart way to do it. So
yeah, that's the.
I'm sorry to do it, folks, but we have run from 3:30 to 6, which is excellent. I'm so glad to see that we had a turnout. I honestly did not expect the first one, at least, to have much of a turnout because we didn't get the word out wide, far and wide. But the conversation in here, this is why I always enjoyed the EU versions of Biddle, because you just get this great collection of people, and there was never any real attempt to prescribe a conversation. Like, it always just sort of happened, and that's exactly what happened today again. And I love this edition, so I'm going to keep doing this. We're going to do it at least once a month, if not maybe bi-weekly. We'll see, and it'll depend on the participation we get. And but with that, I think we're going to go ahead and call it here. I want to remind everybody that there is still the evening one that's happening in a few hours from now. Nate will be hosting that one, and there'll be several of the people you saw here will be on that as well. But until then, I really want to thank everybody that participated today. I really enjoyed this conversation. I really appreciate your time and you stopping by and giving us your time and participating. And I look forward to doing this again very, very soon. So with that, I will give everybody an opportunity to have one final word if there's anything they would like people to know, or just anything that they want to get out there. So anyone have anything?
DL is live tomorrow. Linux Saloon is live in 2 hours, I think. 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Eric, in the future, when we do the European things, send me like a ping an hour before. So I'll be like, oh, right. I do need to make sure I'm done with this thing.
I was watching This Week in Linux, and I'm like watching you like go through, and it's getting closer and closer to 3, and I'm just thinking, maybe he'll be done, maybe he won't. I didn't want to bug you, but yeah, I will in the future.
I completely forgot, and then I saw Aries put the message in the chat. I was like, oh, right.
It's okay.
That's why I said 1500 or 3 p.m. or whenever Michael's done with This Week in Linux. That's why I said last week. Just in case.
The reason, the problem is, if Aries hadn't said something or someone hadn't said something, I wouldn't have remembered to stop talking. So that's what I just meant. Like, just remind me to stop talking, and then we
stop
can
talking.
All right. Well, with that, then I'm going to. Go ahead, Nate.
I just have one thing. So I want to make sure that it's said here as well. Be sure to tip your developers, and as always, please Linux responsibly. Yes. So
that's right.
Worth it.
All right. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and say, have a good evening, and we will see you again very soon. All right.
See you.
Bye-bye.